shelter of secrets with dogs in them, of course.
Okay, sorry, I just found out we had a technical difficulty going on and it wasn't showing the video, but I think I fixed that on YouTube. So hopefully that will, we're gonna have to go do the introductions again. I'm really sorry. Well, maybe people will have heard it. They'll have heard it. So I guess we'll just go with Tina.
We'll just go.
It just wasn't showing well, maybe not. You know what? We're just going to start all over again. Welcome to Book Chat with Lucy Monroe and Carrie Nichols. We tell people we're not professional vloggers. We are not professional vloggers. Tech is not my friend. Sometimes it's really not my friend. It's kind of cranky and bullying. I'm just saying. I mean, I love technology, but it can be a real pain. And welcome to our book chat. We have three fabulous guests with Lucy Monroe and Carrie. Oh, good.
Okay,
And yeah, it's working now. Yeah. And so we will start with, let's start with T this time, and we'll go back in the other circle in case. Okay. So T, will you introduce yourself?
Sure. I'm T. O'Fallon. I'm a romantic suspense writer. I've been living in New York most of my life with a 5-year stop in Colorado. And I am the author of the NYPD Blue and Gold, the Federal Canine series, and the Canine Special Ops series. So even though my first series was technically not a canine series, even those 3 books had dogs in them. So I guess that was a sign of things to come.
Right.
My next book is coming out in July, Honor and Duty. It's Federal Canine book number 6. And I'm excited because next year I'm going to be starting a straight up thriller series. So that'll be a little bit different for me.
Cool.
Terrific. And then let's go next with Linda. I'm just going on the pictures that I see. I don't know what y'all see on your screen, but that's the order I'm seeing them in.
Linda.
Oh, I'm sorry.
That's all right.
Just introduce me again. I'm Linda O. Johnston, also Larko Jensen these days. This is, whoops, okay, as I said, my technology is not good, but this is my new pseudonym, my Alaska Untamed Mysteries. And of course, it has all sorts of Alaskan wildlife in it and a dog. And I also write for Harlequin Romantic Suspense. And the series that I write, that's my own series, has dogs in it. Plus, I also do some of their Colton books, which is basically a work for hire. And in the past, I've written lots of other mysteries, all with dogs, and other books as well.
Awesome. Teri, how about you next?
Hi, I'm Teri Ann Stanley. I write contemporary romance. I have 1 romantic suspense back in my first book. The next 5 are romantic comedy. I'm sorry, I'm just like today.
Okay.
I'm technical difficulties.
My writing
chatting
sometimes makes a little more sense than my words. Anyway, the current series that I have out now, single titles with source books, are military veterans who train service dogs for other veterans, and they live on a ranch, so they are also cowboys, as one does.
I love that. I love that. That's fantastic. And Carrie, please introduce yourself again.
I'm Carrie Nichols. I write for mostly for Harlequin Special Edition, Small Town Sweethearts. I have a small town setting, and I like kids and dogs in my books and humor. And I do have one with Entangled Bliss, and that's me.
Awesome. And I'm Lucy Monroe. And if you don't know me, I write passionate category romance, paranormal romance, romantic suspense, single title romance, and I'm working on mystery right now. Oh, and I write historicals, but not all at the same time. And I go through cycles. Right now, I'm pretty much focused on my paranormals, the mystery, and then the passionate category, and the single title stuff with a little bit of mystery in it, lots of romance. I'm going to, Marcia Scott says Cowboys Rock. And by the way, Marcia Scott says hi, Jay Anderson says hi, and Susan Wilson says hi from the UK, just FYI. Okay, and I will be watching for any questions. And so we're just going to kind of leap into, I mean, we're talking about why we love animals in books. And I think the first book I read that I was really like, just, oh, this is such a fun add to the book, was an Agatha Christie murder mystery I read decades ago, and it was called Dumb Witness. And I love the Poirot mysteries, but there was this little dog, and he just fell in love with the dog, and everyone fell in love with the dog, including me. And I just thought Bob the Terrier was like this really great, character. And then it wasn't too long after that I started reading Lillian Jackson Braun's The Cat Mysteries, her cat cozy mysteries. And I will be honest, I love reading about dogs in books. But when I see a cat on the cover, I am far more likely to pick the book up. Not that I won't just get the book with the dogs, but it's just like, cats are so cute. Sorry, dogs are cute too. But it's just a different thing. And whatever. We all are just, I like them both. Anyway, that is why I love animals in books, and how I got started loving animals in books. And my allergies, by the way, are acting up. And speaking of, I'm very allergic to both cats and dogs. But I love them. We've had them, and you just kind of deal sometimes, but we aren't going to have any anymore eventually. So why don't you all please say what brought you to like your love for animals in books? Or did it start with reading, or did it start with writing your first book with an animal in it, and that was something you just fell in love with doing? Anyone can answer.
I'll start. Okay. So as a child, I don't know how exactly it started, but I just loved all animals. And I thought I was going to be a vet one day. And I probably went through every animal a kid could possibly have. I mean, we started with cats, dogs, gerbils, mice, snakes, lizards. I even had a chicken for a while there. So I think that pretty much covers and birds. Yeah. Then as life goes on, I wound up with dogs, and those became my absolute favorite. I mean, they truly are man and woman's best friend. And I started writing my first series, the NYPD Blue and Gold series. And as I was saying earlier, it's not technically a canine series, but there was a dog in every single one of those 3 books. So the end of that series came along. I'd written the books, and my editor says to me, T, I've noticed in all your social media posts, you post a lot about your own dogs. Have you ever thought about writing a canine series? And I had not.
I love that.
Stupid me. So the Federal Canine series was born of that conversation. And now I'm like 6 or 7 books into it. And I'll be doing 3 books of canine special ops. And I should say that 2 of the books in the Federal Canine series have cats in them. It was never part of the plan. The cats were just 2 of those characters that just inserted themselves into my brain as I was writing. And I have to say, in Serve and Protect, I absolutely love the cat. And there's this one scene, which again was not planned, but it's a scene that has the cat and the canine in it. And it's just a really fun scene. So I hope you all pick up that book and just to read that scene, if nothing else.
Yeah.
I feel like
that's how I got into it.
I feel like I need to read that book. Anyone else want to add?
I can go.
Sure.
So I've always been an animal person. I have 2 degrees in zoology, actually. And, of course, at one point played around with, I want to be a veterinarian, but I'm a science nerd. Anyway, my gateway animal in books, I think is the hamster from Janet Ivanovich's Stephanie Plum series. I haven't read any of her books in a while, but I'm like, is that hamster still alive? I mean, he's not like,
it can be in fiction.
yeah.
It can
So
live forever, unlike in real life.
yeah. And then I had animals in my books. My Bourbon brothers have a couple of dogs, but the way my cowboys with dogs came about was I had thought I would write a series about veterans rescuing horses. I live in Kentucky, so thoroughbreds, I'm like, we'll do that. And my agent was like, well, let's make them cowboys. And I'm like, well, okay. So we moved them to Montana. And so they're cowboys rescuing horses, or military veteran cowboys rescuing horses. And I went to a conference and was rooming with another author from my agency who trains service dogs for veterans with PTSD. And she had a dog with her that week. And this little dog, Goose, was just the best dog. She was well, I guess she still is, black lab. And she was just on the money with her behavior the whole time we were there. We'd go up to our room and take off her vest and she would play. But then, every time we were out, she was just perfectly well behaved. And I was very impressed with that because my own dogs are not. I met with an editor who was like, I really like this series, but I think we just got something with horses. Would you think about something else? And I was like, oh, well, what about dogs? Because, I was like, living with one at the time. And she's like, I really like that. I think that's a good idea. Well, that week, my father had been failing for a very long time. He was very sick. And my mother called to say that he was going downhill fast. And I said, well, I'll come home. And I went and changed my flight. And it was a big deal, of course, but it wasn't a surprise. So I was okay, or so I thought. And I came back in after changing my flight and ran into Cole and Goose. And I said, hey, I'm leaving with you guys tomorrow. And because, my dad's not doing well. And the dog, who had been so perfectly behaved the whole time, jumped up on her hind legs, put her paws on my shoulders and kissed me.
Oh.
And that's what she was trained to do. When someone was having anxiety, she cued right into it and interrupted what was going on with them. And I was just like, oh my God, and then the same day my dad passed away. And the whole rest of that day, the dog would just, every so often, she'd just come over and lay her head on my lap to get some pets.
Oh.
It was like, she could just tell. And I'm a total believer now. My own dogs are not quite as sensitive.
But that's really neat.
If I have cookies, but yeah. So that's my dog stuff.
I love it.
Okay, Linda, do you want to say how you got into writing animals or
Well,
animals and books?
I'm not sure I can say anything that compares with the others, but I've been a dog lover, probably born that way. I'm a cynophilist, that's another term for it. And we were talking before about wanting to become a veterinarian. That's what I thought I wanted to do when I was a young child, until I took an advanced biology course. In those days, it was horrible. We were supposed to cut frogs open to get their eggs out and whatever. And I realized that if I became a veterinarian, I would be cutting animals open to save their lives, but still I couldn't do it. So I figured, okay, I'll do something else. And I wound up getting into advertising, public relations. And then eventually I'm a lawyer. I'm officially inactive these days, but I became a lawyer. In the meantime, I started writing while I was before I was practicing law, and started getting books published. And in the meantime, I had also Well, I'm more of a dog lover than everything else. I love wildlife. I'm not as much into cats, although we have cats in the family now. Our younger son owns cats. But I am addicted to Cavalier King Charles Spaniels. And that's because my very first trip to London, I saw somebody on the London Underground with a Cavalier on her lap. And I didn't know what they were, but I started studying up on them. And when I got back to the United States, they were very rare then, so it took a while to find one, but I got my first Cavalier. And I've had Cavaliers ever since, and it's getting close to 50 years.
That's so neat, though. Yeah.
So, and I write about them when I don't want to only write about them because I probably bore everybody. But one of my first, like my time travel books was about a Cavalier, and what my first mystery series was the Kendra Ballantyne Pet Sitter mystery series about a lawyer who started having some issues and became a pet sitter and wound up having to solve mysteries because dead bodies kept cropping up.
As they do, yeah.
As they do.
They do.
As they do.
And anyway, her name was Kendra Ballantyne,
Yeah.
and her dog was Lexi, and she lived in the Hollywood Hills, and she was a practicing lawyer. Well, back in those days, my name was never Linda. I mean, it was never Kendra, it was always Linda. But I had a Cavalier named Lexi, and I live in the Hollywood Hills, still do. And I also was practicing law then, but fortunately I never really tripped over dead bodies and didn't have to officially solve mysteries, just for my characters. Since then I've done several other mystery series, all of which do have dogs in them one way or another. And it's always been fun having dogs in whatever I've been writing, and the books I'm writing now, I've enjoyed trips with cruises to Alaska and such. And the last one kind of inspired my current mystery series. And I haven't been able to go back to do more research, although hopefully I'll be able to soon. But it was great fun. And I write about the wildlife there because what inspired me there was I took in the Juneau area where we were stopped for the cruise, I took a boat tour where there were people on board who were giving tours and pointing out all the wonderful wildlife there. So that's kind of the background for my Alaska Untamed mystery, my characters there. But she does bring along her husky. And so that's fair too, although that brings up other issues in following books. And anyway, it's just, I've always enjoyed writing about dogs. I've always enjoyed having dogs, especially Cavaliers. And I intend to keep on going that way as long as I can.
I like that. Well, I know, Carrie, you have a ton of animals in your books. In fact, it just feels natural. Like that you write a story, it's going to have an animal in it. But what birthed that love? And by the way, before you answer, I'm just going to say we do have some questions from readers. And so after you answer, we're going to go through the questions, and let's keep our answers a little short so that we can get to the questions and the other questions we've got for today. So Carrie, go ahead.
I guess this is going to sound trite, but at one point I had thought about being a veterinarian too.
I'm loving this.
Because I just love animals, and I've always loved cats and dogs. And when I was first married, we had a Cairn Terrier, and then we had a Samoyed, both at the same time. And then after that, after they both passed away, my kids were little, so we didn't really have anything. And then the neighbor's cat decided it liked living with us better than its home, and it kept trying to move in with us. And the people would come and get it and take it back, and the cat would hide when he'd hear the other people come. And so, but then he came back one time and took the cat home, and that night we had like 3-4 feet of snow, and the cat couldn't get back. And so after that, then the boys were missing having a cat. So we went to the cat rescue, and we had a cat, and we've had cats ever since. But I don't know, dogs they just appeared in the book too. I mean, like
they came to you. They're real characters. I mean, the one thing that I love, I don't write a lot of animals in my books, but when I read animals in books, I like them to have fully realized characters. Like they have a role. They're not just there as a, as like furniture. They're living beings that have like a personality, which is an awesome thing. I'm going to go. We have a question from Rachel Thomas, and waving hi to Rachel. And she says, do the animals in your books ever try to take over the story when you're writing it?
Yeah, I had, in the sergeant's matchmaking dog, it was supposed to be a former military dog, and he had this whole big backstory. And then I started writing the book, and the first time he was on the page, he was like, "No, I wasn't a former military dog. I just hung around the camp in Afghanistan." And I'm like, "What? No!"
All that research down.
all down the drain. Yeah, but
what about the rest of y'all? Do you struggle with that? Your animals taking over the story?
Well, the quick answer,
unlike, I'm sorry.
The quick
I was just
answer,
going to say in real life that I don't get my pups trained very well, but usually in my stories, they tend to be. So sometimes they do stuff that I didn't plan, but most of the time they listen to me. But they do, they protect people, take care of things.
Like it.
What were you going to say?
well, the quick answer is no. That's the quick answer. The slightly longer answer is once in a while I've thought, what would happen if the dog could actually talk, or at least think. And I did read a book years ago. The author wrote the book from the dog's point of view. It was a bit odd, I have to say. And the absolute best book I ever read, where an author integrated a dog, in this case, into the storyline with just the best action tags and interactions with the human characters, is a book by Linda Howard called Troublemaker. And there's I think it's a golden retriever, and it's just, what she did was awesome. If I could write like that with dogs and integrate them into the story, I would be so happy.
Robert Crace wrote police murder mystery suspect, and the dog has
so good
captors.
You get the point of view of the dog, but it's not like the dog thinks like a human. The dog thinks like a dog, or like we think a dog thinks.
Must protect the pack and stuff like that.
But Teri, did you want to answer that, Teri?
Sure. It's been interesting because with my series, the dogs are a big focus of the plot. And Big Chance Cowboy, the dog, is based on my dog Homer, who is just a big giant mess of dogness. So the fact that he wasn't very well behaved in the book was kind of art imitating life. And then my more recent dog in Charming Texas Cowboy plays a little bit of matchmaker, and so it was really actually a little bit difficult not to anthropomorphize it that much, because I was like, okay, that's giving the dog a little too much credit. But I mean, I don't know, they're part of my family, so they're parts of the story,
Yep.
I love that. Okay, so Susan Wilson asked, how did you start writing? I think that's an interesting question, especially with all of y'all having very diverse backgrounds. So what led you to write a book? Just any old book? And we can't do our whole life story, so it's got to be
quick.
Yeah. The quick answer. How did you start writing?
Well, that's really easy for me to answer. So I was reading romantic suspense for a while at this point, and I was on vacation at the beach, Wrightsville Beach, North Carolina, with my boyfriend, and we always go to a bookstore before we hit the beach. So we went, I got a book by a pretty big name author, and I started reading this book, and I thought it was not good.
Yeah.
So I literally threw it onto the stand. And my boyfriend says to me, T, you write really good investigative reports. Why don't you just write your own book? So we went back to the bookstore, bought, like a diary, a nice leather bound diary, and back to the beach and started writing up a story. And to this day, that story has never been published. Maybe it will be one day because I really like that story. But that's how it began for me.
That's great. How about you, Teri?
I went to when I started college, I wanted to be an English major, and my mom said, "That's great. What are you going to do to earn a living?" So I went into biology. We're still trying to figure out what I'm going to do to make a living. I have a nice job now, but
I love that.
And so literature, my mom worked at a library. Books have always been a huge part of my life, as I'm sure they are of all of yours. But I think, like T, I read something, I was like, gosh, I could do this. Well, interestingly enough, it's not quite that easy, but I could rewrite a lot of other people's books, I think. But, I decided I was going to try it, and I did a NaNoWriMo thing, and that Entangled sponsored, and I sent in my manuscript at the end of Nano. It was totally unedited, but they liked my voice and called and offered me a job.
Oh, wow.
Or a contract. So
yeah, that's awesome. Linda, how did you start writing?
I've always written. When I was in grade school, I started to write a book about a girl and boy who were going to go all sorts of places all over the world. When it never got finished, but my mother had saved it, so I have that. Wow. And I haven't looked at it for a long time, but I always wanted to write. And as I got older, I took various English classes, advanced English classes. I went into journalism. But I was always writing something, and I just started finally sitting down and actually writing some fiction, and it increased. Kept on going.
Oh, that's awesome. Now, Carrie, I know the story, but how did you start writing?
Well, I've always wanted to write, and I've always written, but it really wasn't until my boys grew up, and especially when the youngest moved out, and it's like, what do I do now? I mean, and it's like, well, maybe I should finally get serious about finishing and writing that book I wanted to write. Of course, took me about 5 years and
right.
A lot of different tries, but eventually.
When I started writing, my youngest, who just turned 30, was a year and a half old, and I was taking my quiet time in the bathtub, which was the only place I could be quiet, and I was having a conversation with God. One of those, and it was like, write a book. And I was just like, I need to write a book. And I started off, and my first book was nonfiction. My second book was inspirational romance, which is not my thing. I write really hot romance when I write romance. But then I found I had a dream. The first book took me 3.5 years to write the first romance. Then I had a dream, and it was a Regency romance, and that book took me 6 weeks to write. I woke up, I had the story, I wrote the story, and from there it just progressed. I learned, and like I said, it took me 9 years to publish that first book with a publisher, with Harlequin Presents, and then after that I sold all the books I'd written before. So except the nonfiction, that's the one book that has never published. And it probably never will, because I don't feel the same way about things that I did when I wrote that book. So I would have to go back, and it would have to be revised so much I might as well just write a whole new one. So we have more questions. I'm going to just give some comments. I haven't been interspersing them because, we've been chatting, but I do want to, Susan Wilson said she loved Hercule Poirot and Lynn Graham books. She's the one that asked, how did we start writing? Jay Anderson answered the question about, and y'all are welcome to answer in the comments, and I will read your answers, about how you got developed your love for animals and books. But Jay Anderson said never really thought about it, but possibly the Edward Lear's Birds in His Beard. And then she, Jay Anderson, I'm sorry, because I don't know from initials. I recently read an older Linda Howard. When it appeared the German Shepherd was killed, I was so upset. Turns out the dog was saved. I can now keep reading her books. This is something.
I know what book that is. It's like Crystal Cove or something.
Yeah, right. And we all we don't want our animals killed in books. We do.
No,
that
Absolutely
does not work for most readers. And Jay Anderson, as you speak, my dog is laying on the rug grumbling about me not chasing flies with him, not well behaved. Now, and Susan Wilson asked what books are coming out for everyone, which I was going to ask y'all at the end. So I think we'll save it to the end when we close off, and I'll ask y'all to just kind of go around and say what's coming up next. Marcia said, are you plotters or pantsers? And what impact does that have when you're including animals in your books? Like, does it take, so let's start with Linda this time. Are you a plotter or a pantser or a combo of both?
I'm pretty much a plotter. I mean, things can change, but I have developed what I call my plot skeleton, and I sort of plug in what's going to happen when, and I don't always follow it exactly, but I know pretty much from before I start even where things are going to go, and that includes the animals, not necessarily scene by scene, but it's clear to me where they're going to, what importance they're going to be to the characters in the book. And they're always, major characters too, and they help out in whatever way, even if they're just companions. Sometimes that's the case, sometimes they do more, but it's always, I know beforehand sort of where they're going to fit in the story.
That makes sense. Now, T, how about you?
I'm primarily a plotter, although that has become less so over the years. Pretty much, I used to start out with a really long outline, like a scene by scene outline, which could be 50, 60, 70 pages long. And it's changed a little bit. It's more like 25 pages now. And the two cats that I wrote into those two books I was talking about, those were not anywhere in those outlines at first. Those just came to me, by the seat of my pants.
Yeah.
So that happens. And before I forget, that book that we were talking about, where the German Shepherd does not die at the end.
Oh, I remember. Yes, Diamond Bay. Yes,
I have
diamonds, crystals, rubies, whatever.
Yeah, he was shot, but he survived. Yes.
Now, what about you, Teri? Are you a plotter or a pantser?
Planter. I aspire to plotting, but a lot of times I just can't see what's going to happen until I get going. So I kind of have an idea where I'm going. I think the hardest thing has been to write the books that I've, already got blurbs for, I shouldn't say that. I like to have somewhere a rough idea of where I'm going.
Filmmaker Alex Holder had extensive.
I will say I am both. I wrote the first 12 books with a plot. The 13th book that sold, I wrote by the seat of my pants. Then like the next 40 some books I wrote by the seat of my pants with very little plotting. And then I went back to plotting. And so now I do a combo of both. I'll maybe do some plot cards or have an outline, or I'll just completely seat of the pants. I really let the book tell me what my process is going to be, because it's like sometimes I got to write the book to get to know the characters, and sometimes I need to have the plot before I can write the story. It just really, but my characters come first with every book. It doesn't matter if I'm plotting or if I'm pantsing. The characters and who they are dictate where I'm going to go. Carrie, what about you?
I guess like Teri, I'm a plantster. I mean, I know the beginning, middle, and the end, but then I have to figure out how to get there.
Yeah, I think it's, and I know you write out of order. So
yeah, I wish I could write chapter 1, 2, 3, 4. No, and then I have to try and figure out, well, where does this scene go? Where does that scene go? No, this scene goes here. So, but I did see a meme. Somebody talked about, about that writing is more like, for me, assembling a patchwork quilt. And that's
right. That's like, so we all have our own process. I did want to say, Selma Haywood said, my daughter Lindy and I are enjoying this. Thanks, ladies, you rock.
And I don't know if you can see my cat joined us.
We do writing Zooms, and her cat often joins. I'm like, yes, I live vicariously. Okay, so we're actually getting to time, so I am going to close with that final question of what's coming up next for y'all. And we'll just go around and I'll call your name and you can tell us what's coming up next for you, and maybe your favorite social media platform someone might follow you on and what your name on that platform might be. So let's start with Teri. Is that okay?
Yeah. Actually, I'm not quite sure what's next. I finished my contract with the cowboy veteran dog guys, but I have another story that's part of that series that I would like to put out, but it's not written. And I'm working on a couple other ideas that we'll just have to see where they go. So stay tuned. Follow me on Facebook.
Watch this space.
Yeah. So I actually have a profile on Facebook as Teri Ann Stanley and a page. My page is where I spend more time than the profile. So yeah.
So follow Teri Ann Stanley, author, on Facebook.
That's right.
Go ahead.
You can find me at teofallon.com, TEEOFALLON. You can sign up for newsletters, check out all the blurbs of my books. I would say Facebook is my favorite place to be. That would be Teo Fallon author, and that's my author page as opposed to my profile page. You can also find me at a special group if you want a little more direct interaction, and that's Teo Fallon's Martini Room.
Cute. That's cute.
I like
I
that.
like it.
You can find me on all the other social media sites, but those are my faves.
And what's next for you, T?
So what's next for me? Federal Canine number 6, which is called Honor and Duty. That's coming out July 18th. It's the 6th out of 7th book in that series. They can all be read out of order, but most people seem to want to start with the first in the series, which is Lock and Load.
Love it. Thank you. And Linda, how about you?
Well, I had 2 books published in May. That first Alaska Untamed mystery, and also my Guardian Canine on Call, my Shelter of Secrets book. And I'm working on the next mystery. By the end of the year, there's going to be my next Colton book, which, as I said, it's fun to do for Harlequin romantic suspense, although they tell me what to write, and that's a lot of fun, but no dogs. But then I also have more to come in my rescue ranch stuff. So lots to come. Keep busy.
That's terrific. And are you on any social media platforms?
Oh yeah, I do have my page is lindaojohnston.com, and I'm not really very active much on various social media except for Facebook, and I'm there constantly. So look me up on Facebook, and I will be delighted to communicate with anybody, and you can see what's going on. I don't have a specific author page, but I put stuff up on my regular page about what I'm doing with my writing and stuff like that. So come see me.
Okay. And Carrie?
Let's see, I have my next Harlequin special edition. It's called A Hero and His Dog. That's
Right.
coming out, yeah, December 27th. He's a veteran, he's an amputee, and it's a 3-legged dog. I know, I felt
It's
bad,
such
but I
a
talked to
good story.
several vets and they said, dogs, they don't worry about it. They just live in the moment and it's okay. So he's got 3 legs, so he can teach the hero that, yeah, it's okay to live in the moment. You can have a life without it. And then I have an free online read. It'll start, it'll be on the Harlequin website. It's a short 10,000 words, starting November 21st, and they serialize it. That's an older couple, they're 50 plus. And then I don't have a date yet. It's His Unlikely Homecoming. That'll be a Harlequin special edition. And he ends up, not that he wanted to, he would much rather be a hermit and a Scrooge, but he ends up, he's known as the pet finder, and he ends up reuniting
Pets
people
with
with their pets.
I love that. Well, I have a book coming out in July. It's Her Off Limits Prince, and it's an indie release of a passionate category romance. So if y'all read my Harlequin Presents, please pick that book up because I think you'll love it. And after that, I have more releases this year. I'm on Twitter, I'm on Facebook, and I'm on Instagram. And if you connect to me there and at me, I will reply to you wherever you at me. I'm at lucymonroe.com, and I want to thank everyone for joining Carrie and I today, our guests and the readers alike, for watching this book chat on why we love animals and animals in books. Y'all have been awesome. I'm going to stop the live stream now, which is always a little bit problematic. So